The rain had been falling for hours, washing the streets of the city into streaks of silver and sorrow. From the tall glass windows of his penthouse, Graham Alcott watched the drops race each other down the glass, their paths colliding and fading, much like the people below, small, fleeting, and forgettable. He was a billionaire, the kind whose name carried weight in boardrooms and headlines. But at that moment, his world felt smaller than ever. It was his birthday, 65. The candles were still unlit on the table prepared by his staff, a cake that no one would eat. The room was silent except for the hum of the rain and the low breathing of his old Labrador Jasper lying by the fireplace. Graham had wealth, yes, but companionship. That had left him years ago, scattered in fragments of a broken marriage and a daughter he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. He reached for the phone, intending to call someone, anyone, but stopped. What would he say? Come celebrate the life of a man who traded love for ambition? He sighed, slipped on his coat, and stepped outside into the downpour. The city streets glistened like glass, the smell of wet asphalt thick in the air. He walked without a destination, driven by something he couldn't name, loneliness maybe, or guilt. Near an alley behind a closed bakery, he noticed a small figure huddled beside a stack of discarded cardboard boxes. A girl, barely 16, maybe younger, wrapped in a soaked blanket, her hair tangled, her hands clutching a worn-out backpack. Graham paused. He wasn't used to stopping for anyone. But something in the way, she looked up, not in fear, but defiance caught him off guard. Her eyes were a piercing gray, sharp and calm, like she had seen too much, and still chose silence. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, pulling an umbrella over her. "There's a shelter 2 blocks away." She shook her head. "They don't take dogs," she murmured, motioning toward a small brown puppy curled against her legs. He frowned. "So you'd rather freeze?" She didn't answer. The puppy whimpered softly, and the girl pulled it closer. Graham hesitated. The sensible thing to do was walk away, but sense had never felt so hollow. He knelt slightly. "Come with me," he said. "Just for dinner. You both look like you could use something warm." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't even know me." "You're right," he replied quietly. "But maybe I should." The word surprised even him. She studied his face for a moment before nodding slowly. "Just dinner," she said, almost as if warning him. "Just dinner," he promised. Inside his penthouse, the sudden contrast of warmth and light felt almost cruel. The girl's wet shoes squeaked against the marble floor. She stood by the door, clutching her dog while her eyes darted across the vast room, the gold-framed paintings, the fireplace, the untouched cake. "You live here alone?" she asked softly. He nodded. Too many rooms for one man. The staff had gone home for the evening, leaving only silence and the crackle of firewood. Graham fetched her a towel and some dry clothes from the laundry, a simple sweater and jogging pants, probably left behind by his late daughter, Elena, years ago. When she reappeared from the bathroom, her hair was damp and her cheeks glowed with warmth. The puppy, now wrapped in a small blanket, slept beside the fire. Graham watched her quietly as she ate slow, careful bites of soup, as if each spoonful might vanish if she wasn't gentle enough. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she said after a pause. "That's a pretty name." She gave a faint, guarded smile. "My mom chose it. Where is she now?" Her spoon froze midair. The air shifted, heavy. She looked down. "She died a few months ago." Graham's chest tightened. I'm sorry. She was strong, Lila whispered. She said life storms can wash away everything except truth. Then she laughed and said that truth can hurt more than hunger. There was something about her words, the phrasing, the rhythm, it made him pause. She sounds like someone I would have liked to know. She said the same about my father, Lila added quietly. Graham tilted his head. Did you ever meet him? Lila shook her head. No, Mom said he was rich, very rich, but she never wanted his money, just his honesty. The room went still. The fire popped. The words echoed in Graham's mind like a ghostly refrain he'd heard before. A storm of memory rose, a woman with chestnut hair, a laugh that haunted him every time he saw his daughter's eyes, a name buried deep beneath years of regret. He set down his glass. What was your mother's name? He asked carefully. Clara Wynne. And just like that, the world tilted. The air rushed out of him. His throat went dry. That name, he hadn't heard it spoken aloud in 40 years. Clara. The only woman who ever made him feel human before his empire hardened him. The one who vanished before he could say he loved her. He stared at Lila, really seeing her for the first time, the same gray eyes, the faint scar near her lip, the quiet defiance. Lila, he whispered, his voice trembling. Did your mother ever tell you what your father's name was? Lila looked up, confusion flickering in her gaze. She said she never wanted me to find him, only that he'd recognize me when the time came. Graham's hands shook. He reached for a photo frame near the piano, a faded picture of him and Clara from his youth, her smile half hidden behind wild hair. He placed it before Lila. Is this her? He asked, voice cracking. Lila's spoon clattered against the plate. Her eyes widened as tears brimmed. That's my mom, she whispered. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind that drowns even the sound of one's heartbeat. And in that moment, Graham realized the truth that shattered his world. The homeless girl sitting by his fire was his daughter. The fire crackled softly, filling the unbearable silence that stretched between them. Lila sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the photo, the flame's reflection trembling within her tears. Graham's breath came shallow. He felt like a man, suddenly standing at the edge of every mistake he had ever made. He wanted to speak, to reach across the table and say something that could rewrite the years that had vanished, but what words could mend decades of absence? His voice came out barely above a whisper. Lila, your mother and we were young. I didn't know she was... Lila looked up, her voice fragile but sharp. Didn't know or didn't care. Her question cut through him like glass. He swallowed hard. I cared more than I've cared for anything since. But I was foolish, consumed by ambition. I let my pride decide what love was worth. Lila wiped her eyes roughly. She told me once you loved her, that you had a kind heart, but that your world didn't have space for people like us. The words landed heavy. He turned to the window, rain still streaking down like ghosts of memories. She was right, he murmured. I built a world too small for love and too large for peace. For a moment, neither spoke. The puppy stirred by the fire, curling closer to her leg, as if sensing the weight in the air. Then Lila asked quietly, Why did you invite me in, Mr. Alcott? You didn't know who I was. He turned to her, eyes glistening. Because something in you reminded me of what I lost. I just didn't realize it was exactly that. Lila studied him, the once mighty man who now looked smaller than his shadow. Slowly, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded letter. She made me promise to give you this if I ever found you. Her hands trembled as she passed it to him. The paper was worn, edges softened by time and rain. Graham opened it carefully. Clara's handwriting was unmistakable, gentle, looping, elegant. If you're reading this, Graham, I hope the noise of your world has quieted enough for you to hear silence again. I never wanted you to find guilt, only peace. I forgave you long ago. Please, if life gives you one more chance, don't waste it. His tears fell freely now, blurring the ink. He clutched the letter to his chest, as if afraid it might vanish too. Lila watched him, her anger softening into something quieter, a weary compassion. She forgave you, she whispered. He nodded slowly. But can you? Lila hesitated. Then she stood, walked to the fireplace, and placed the photo of her mother beside the flames. Maybe not today, she said softly, but she would have wanted me to try. When Graham finally smiled faint, trembling, it was the first time in years that it reached his eyes. Outside, the rain began to ease, the dulny clouds parting just enough for a thin beam of moonlight to touch the window pane. Inside, an old man and a lost girl in the quiet glow of forgiveness, the kind that doesn't erase the past, but allows two hearts to finally begin again.